Gail White, a homemaker who subsequently became his manager, and Michael White, a dentist, welcomed Jaleel Ahmed White into the world on November 27, 1976, in Culver City, California. White was an only kid who, encouraged by his preschool instructor, displayed an early interest in acting. He started his career at the age of 3, co-starring with Bill Cosby, Kellogg's, and Goodyear tires in advertisements for companies like Jelly, before earning a Bachelor of Arts in Cinema and Television Production from UCLA in 2001. White attended South Pasadena High School and John Marshall Fundamental High School. In 1984, White made his television debut on The Jeffersons, playing a piano prodigy named Tiffany, which marked the beginning of his acting career. Later, he starred in the brief comedy Charlie and Company from 1985 to 1986. He also tried out for The Cosby Show's Rudy Huxtable part, which was originally written for a boy but was eventually cast as a woman. Steve Urkel's stint on Family Matters in 1989 marked his breakthrough. White became the show's main protagonist after Urkel, who was originally only supposed to make a single guest appearance, became a global phenomenon thanks to his eccentric appeal and catchphrase, "Did I do that?" He received a Young Artist Award in 1991 and 3 NAACP Image Awards in 1994, 1995, and 1997 for the part. However, co-star Reginald Johnson noted that working with White might be difficult because of the show's change in focus, and that the character's authority occasionally produced tension. White also appeared as Oracle on Full House and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and he played a fictionalized version of himself in the 1992 Jal White special. In the 1990s, White was the first American actor to voice Sonic the Hedgehog. He also voiced Sonic's siblings, Manic and Sonia, in Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Saddam, and Sonic Underground. Following the conclusion of Family Matters in 1998, White participated in the UPN sitcom Grown Ups from 1999 to 2000. She also made appearances in movies such as Dreamgirls, 2006, Big Fat Liar, 2002, and The 1517 to Paris 2018. Guest appearances on Boston Legal, House, Psych, Castle, Bones, and The Big Show are among his television credits, along with hosting series like CBS's Flipside 2024 and Sci-Fi's Total Blackout 2012. He also provided voice acting for characters in regular show. In addition to acting, White released his memoir Growing Up Urkel in November 2024, reflecting on his life and career after URKL, and introduced a line of cannabis products in 2021 that featured the Purple Urkel strain. In 2012, he participated in Dancing with the Stars as well. However, personal issues affected his performance. The first is the weight of career challenges and typecasting. White's relationship with Steve Urkel started in 1989 when he was chosen for a one-episode guest appearance on Family Matters. Audiences responded well to the character's eccentric charm and comedic timing, which quickly elevated him to the main role. The sitcom was transformed into a cultural phenomenon by Oracle's popularity, which lasted for 9 seasons until 1998. This was a noteworthy accomplishment for White, who was a teenager at the time, and he received 3 NAACP Image Awards in 1994, 1995, and 1997, in addition to a Young Artist Award in 1991. But the character's power came at a price. White's identity as an actor became inseparable from the nerdy, accident-prone character as Oracle gained widespread recognition, overshadowing his variety and promise. White was especially affected by typo casting, a frequent problem for performers in classic parts. He had less opportunity to demonstrate his range because of the entertainment industry's propensity to categorize actors according to a single successful character. White found it difficult to find roles that did not fit the Oracle archetype once Family Matters ended. Producers and casting directors were hesitant to consider him for sad or subtle roles because of his long and decadent portrayal of a humorous, exaggerated character. White, who was still in his early 20s, wanted to establish himself as an actor who could do more than slapstick humor. So this lack of opportunity was not just a professional loss, but also an emotional one. White's dissatisfaction with the Oracle position reached a breaking point in 1999 when he was 21 years old. "If you ever see me do that character again, take me out and put a bullet in my head and put me out of my misery," he said in a blunt interview that year, expressing his frustration. The phrase, in its unadulterated state, perfectly conveyed how deeply disillusioned he was. The role had become into a prison for White, limiting his creative potential and maybe defining his entire career. Even if it was exaggerated, the comment captured the emotional toll of being limited to one position at such a young age, especially when he was keen to pursue new creative endeavors. However, the media sensationalized the 1999 comment, increasing its significance and portraying White as unappreciative of his accomplishment. His battle was made more difficult by this misrepresentation, which left him juggling his own professional frustrations with navigating public opinion. The quote's prominence in the media eclipsed the experience's larger background. An actor in his early 20s who must face the fact that his greatest triumph could also be his biggest setback. The industry's sluggish reaction to White's attempts to escape Urkel's shadow added to the weight of this realization, placing him in a vulnerable position as he made the move from child star to adult actor. In an interview with Vanity Fair in 2011, White responded to the 1999 comment, providing context and insight into his previous feelings. He clarified that the remark was misinterpreted, highlighting that it was the result of adolescent annoyance rather than a sincere dislike for the position. White had started to make amends with the persona that had characterized his career by this point. He recognized the advantages Oracle had given him, such as a stable income and a chance to establish his reputation in the field. He was open about the role's limitations, though, pointing out that its casting had in fact made it more difficult for him to land a variety of parts in the years after Family Matters. White's reunion with Urkel was a difficult process of accepting his legacy rather than a straightforward gesture of acceptance. He understood the cultural relevance of the character, especially for African-American viewers who viewed Urkel as a rare, uplifting example of a black scholar on television. However, he continued to be acutely conscious of the obstacles the role had created for his career. White offered a balanced viewpoint in the Vanity Fair interview, praising Urkel for the opportunities he had created while also calling for more chances to showcase his wider range as an actor. White's post-family issues career serves as an example of the difficulties associated with typecasting as well as his perseverance in overcoming them. In an attempt to disassociate himself from Urkel by portraying him as a more approachable and mature figure, he featured in the UPN sitcom Grown Ups, 1999 to 2000 immediately following the conclusion of the show. Although the show offered a brief break, it did not have the same level of success as Family Matters, and White was still frequently cast in follow-up roles. His flexibility was demonstrated by his roles in Dreamgirls 2006 and Big Fat Liar 2002, as well as by his cameos on Boston Legal, House, and Psych. However, his Urkel legacy took precedence over these possibilities, which were frequently few. White was able to expand his career by taking up voice acting. He proved he could play a role very different from Urkel's humorous demeanor as the first American voice of Sonic the Hedgehog in the animated series from the 1990s. However, the shadow of his sitcom character persisted even in new media, as viewers and industry insiders still mostly linked him to Family Matters. In spite of the limitations of typecasting, White's subsequent endeavors, including as presenting Sci-Fi's Total Blackout 2012 and CBS's Flipside 2024, as well as his 2021 cannabis product line and 2024 biography, Growing Up Urkel, demonstrate his resolve to forge a diverse career. The tragic death of Michelle Thomas comes in at number 2. The emotional journey of Jaleel White. Myra Monkhouse, the girlfriend of White's famous character Steve Urkel, was played by Michelle Thomas when she joined the Family Matters cast in 1993. Myra immediately became a fan favorite due to her lively demeanor and humorous chemistry with White, which brought a fresh dimension to the program. Using her natural acting talent and her previous performance as Justine Phillips on The Cosby Show, Thomas added warmth and genuineness to the character. She and White became good friends off-screen as a result of their common experiences juggling the demands of a popular sitcom as young performers. Because of their strong feeling of camaraderie and regard for one another, Thomas was more than simply a co-star. He was a confidant and a beloved friend. Those close to Thomas were shocked to learn that she had an intra-abdominal desmoplastic small round cell tumor, a rare and dangerous type of stomach cancer. She bravely dealt with her illness after being diagnosed in 1997, working on family issues in spite of her failing health. Her perseverance demonstrated her professionalism and love for what she did. but she was soon unable to continue due to the severity of her condition. Thomas's health had drastically deteriorated by the end of 1998, and she died on December 23, 1998 at the age of 30, at New York City's Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, surrounded by loved ones. The death of Michelle Thomas was a severe and intensely personal tragedy for Jaleel White. As the star of Family Matters, White was still adjusting to the demands of celebrity at the age of 22, and Thomas's passing made matters worse. By the time the show's last season aired in 1998, it had already undergone several changes, including a creative direction change and a network switch from ABC to CBS. An emotional burden was added to the set by Thomas's illness and eventual death, especially for White, who had become very close to her. White has been open about the emotional toll that Thomas's passing took, characterizing it as a loss that created a gap that never went away. He discusses the anguish of witnessing his friend's suffering and the powerlessness he experienced as her condition deteriorated in interviews and his 2024 book, Growing Up URKL. For White, who was still coming to terms with death and the frailty of existence, the suddenness of her death at such a young age was especially upsetting. Thomas was only 30 years old, just a little older than White, which highlighted the sorrow and made him face the uncertainty of loss. Thomas's departure was felt deeply on the Family Matters set. Her illness required changes to the plot, as her character Myra had played a major role in the show's latter seasons. The show's humorous tone frequently felt at odds with the sadness he was going through, and White's performance without Thomas served as a continual reminder of her hardship. As the cast and crew struggled to keep the show's lighthearted tone while grieving Thomas's deteriorating health, the last episodes, which aired in the summer of 1998, were heartbreaking. White's professionalism is demonstrated by his ability to maintain his trademark performance as Urkel at this time, although it came at a heavy emotional cost. The shrine White keeps for Michelle Thomas in his house is among the most moving manifestations of his sorrow. This memorial, a tangible representation of his unwavering love and regard for his friend, provides a personal setting for introspection and remembering. Even though White hasn't revealed the memorial's exact form, whether it's a picture, a memento, or something else, its being in his house highlights how close they were and how important Thomas's memory was to him. The tribute is a celebration of Thomas's spirit, her talent, and the joy she offered to everyone around her. Rather than just a way to express grief, White's need to deal with his loss in a concrete way is reflected in the construction and upkeep of this memorial. The demands of fame and ambition may have easily overshadowed the loss of a dear friend for a young actor catapulted into the spotlight. White's choice to pay tribute to Thomas in private, however, shows that she is dedicated to keeping her memory alive despite the entertainment industry's short-lived interest. In addition, the memorial acts as a reminder of the interpersonal ties that kept him rooted during the turbulent years of family issues, providing comfort in the face of the demands of typecasting and unclear career prospects. White gives a moving description of Thomas's influence on his life and the ongoing anguish of her passing in his 2024 book, Growing Up Urkel. Thomas is given space in the book, which is a reflection on his professional and personal development, and it captures her humor, tenderness, and tenacity. White describes the times they spent together on set, ranging from lighthearted jokes to in-depth discussions about life and their goals. He also talks on how hard it was to deal with her passing at such a young age, pointing out that it made him face his own mortality and the fleeting nature of fame in the entertainment business. White's thoughts in the memoir show a complex view of mourning that takes into account both the immediate destruction caused by Thomas's passing and its long-term impact on his outlook. He characterizes the feeling of loss as an enduring emptiness. However, he also thanks Thomas for their time together and the lessons she taught him via her grace and resilience. In addition to complimenting the private monument at Thomas's home, the memoir acts as a public tribute to her, ensuring that her memory lives on for readers and admirers who might not completely understand the depth of their friendship. The custody dispute involving Jaleel White comes in third, a professional and emotional struggle. The relationship between Jal White and Bridget Hardy started in the middle of the 2000s, and in 2009 their daughter, Somaya, was born. Despite never being married, the couple was originally united by their shared parental responsibilities, but by 2010 their relationship had soured, and they were embroiled in a contentious custody battle over Somaya. Custody disputes are complicated by nature, frequently including legal wrangling and high emotional stakes, and White's situation was no different. The conflict's effects on White's personal and professional life were exacerbated by the additional weight of media attention that came with becoming a public figure. When Hardy accused White of physical abuse and said that there had been instances of domestic violence during their relationship, the argument became more heated. Given White's public character as the endearing, pure Steve Urkel, these allegations, which came to light in 2010, dealt a serious blow to his reputation. Fans' perception of him was drastically altered by the accusations, which threw White into a whirlpool of court cases and public criticism. The accusations and the resulting custody dispute constituted a serious emotional crisis for White, a father who is devoted to his daughter, endangering both his relationship with Somaya and his identity. In 2012, throughout the legal, White acknowledged a violent altercation with Hardy under oath during procedures pertaining to the custody issue. The acknowledgement added a level of complexity to the case, even if the details of his admission, such as the scope and background of the incident, were not extensively described in public records. White's admission was a turning point because it changed the focus from denial to responsibility, but it also increased public conjecture and media attention. In addition to obtaining custody of Somaya, White had to deal with the consequences of these accusations and how they affected his identity both personally and professionally. The custody dispute had a tremendous emotional toll. White has discussed the difficulty of being apart from Somaya during times of legal ambiguity, characterizing the agony of having little access to his daughter as a major cause of distress. His top priority as a father was to keep his relationship with Somaya steady and affectionate. However, this was difficult due to the dispute's acrimonious character. The accusations' public nature added to White's anxiety as he was subjected to criticism from the media and fans, many of whom found it difficult to reconcile the charges with his on-screen persona. His emotional stress was increased by this monitoring, which made him feel alone during an already trying moment. The custody dispute peaked in 2012 when White competed in the 14th season of Dancing with the Stars, a prominent event that brought him back into the public eye. White joined the event with the intention of reintroducing himself to fans outside of the Urkel character and showcasing a different aspect of his talent. But for him, this was a very trying time because of the ongoing custody battle and its emotional toll. White characterized his tenure on the show as a calamity in a 2024 interview, a description that captures the combination of emotional struggle and professional pressure that shaped his involvement. White's Dancing with the Stars performance was patchy, with flashes of promise interspersed with obvious stress. He showed promise in early performances, receiving acclaim for his effort and charisma, while partnered with professional dancer Kim Johnson. But as the season went on, his emotional state started to interfere with his concentration and performance. Tension was reported at the time, including a well-publicized confrontation with Johnson during rehearsals, during which White reportedly lost his temper. White later attributed this incident to the intense stress of the custody dispute. Even while this incident was small in the big picture, tabloid coverage made it seem much worse, which further damaged White's reputation and made him feel misunderstood. White's behavior on the show demonstrated how the custody dispute affected his mental health. His performances faltered as a result of his inability to keep up the positive, self-assured image that was required of candidates. Johnson and White finished in 7th position and were eliminated in the 7th week, a decent but unimpressive result for someone with his level of skill and prominence. In hindsight, White's portrayal of the event as a disaster captures both his dissatisfaction with the result and the larger background of emotional turmoil that prevented him from giving the competition his all. Instead of reviving his career, the show turned into a public platform for his personal problems. White found himself in a difficult situation as a result of the custody dispute and its aftermath, having to juggle the obligations of a public profession with his responsibilities as a father. Even though the abuse claims were officially resolved, they had a lasting effect on his reputation, especially among admirers who connected him to the pure innocence of family issues. Although it was a step towards responsibility, White's choice to confess to the incident under oath did not completely protect him from criticism or conjecture. White's attempts to concentrate on his daughter and his work were frequently overshadowed by the media's propensity to sensationalize such situations. White stayed steadfast in his devotion to Somaya in spite of these difficulties. Although the specifics of the custody dispute's conclusion were not made public, it did enable him to keep up his contact with his daughter, who has continued to play a significant role in his life. White describes the custody dispute as a defining experience that tried his fortitude, but ultimately enhanced his respect of fatherhood in interviews and his 2024 memoir, Growing Up Urkel. His candor regarding the experience, especially how it affected his mental health, shows that he is prepared to face and learn from challenging realities. Jaleel White's perseverance is demonstrated by his career. From his early days as a kid actor to his rise to fame as Steve Urkel in the 1990s, he faced many difficulties, such as forced casting, personal losses, and public scrutiny, even though he also experienced great success, including honors and a long-lasting cultural influence. His 2024 memoir provides an open examination of these challenges, highlighting his development as an actor and a person negotiating the challenges of celebrity.